Hey everybody, today I'm talking about 10 board games that I consider to be essential for every board gamer to own. So these are games that are all in my personal collection and games that I've had consistent success with over the years. I couldn't do without these games and I absolutely love them. I've thought about this list in a lot of detail and carefully put this list together to not only cover a bunch of different gaming mechanisms and types of games, but also being able to facilitate lots of different player counts and different types of gamers as well. So these are going to be games that you can play with inexperienced gamers as well as more experienced salty gamers, because these all stand up to a lot of scrutiny. They're solid mechanically and just consistently fun and can stand up to repeated plays. These are all games that I couldn't live without, and I would stake my reputation on each of these. So let's get started at number 10. At number 10, I have Ohanami. Now, Ohanami is a really simple set collection and card drafting game that only takes around 20 minutes to play. Now, in this game, you are going to have a hand of cards, and from round to round, you're going to pick 2 cards out of this hand you have, and then you're going to pass the remaining cards on to the player to your left, where they're going to repeat that process. Now, not only are you trying to draft these cards based on the different symbols on them, because all the symbols are going to score in different ways. For example, the blue cards are going to score, I think, 3 points each, but in every scoring phase in the game, whereas the grey cards are only going to score once, but they're going to score a big bulk of points. So you're going to weigh up on how you're going to score these cards, whether you're going to go for all the blues and maybe compound those scoring and get them to score in each of the phases, or whether you're going to go for a big chunk of points at the end. But on top of all that, you have a really strict restriction in this game where every single card has a unique number on it. And you're going to be able to play these cards on one of 3 columns in front of you, abiding by the rule that you can only ever play higher than the highest card on a certain column or lower than the lowest card. And this creates some amazing tension, especially as the game develops, as you are squeezed into a corner and your options are quickly running out. And you have to take that gamble on whether, am I going to skip a big bunch of numbers and limit my options in order to score this nice card? Or am I going to play it a bit more safe and keep those numbers as small gaps as possible, giving me a lot more flexibility to place cards in the future? This is such a lovely game, one that's easy to teach, has some really interesting decisions throughout, has a great mounting tension as the game develops, and has been a unanimous hit with whoever I've played this with. It scales very well and it's just an absolute blast to play, and I think one of the best card games to come out in recent memory. That is Ohanami, an absolute joy to play. At number 9, I have the Grand Austria Hotel. Now, this is what we call a Euro strategy style game, which you're trying to get as many victory points as you can before the game ends. This one has an amazing theme where you are trying to run this hotel by acquiring guests. You're trying to fill those guests up in terms of feeding them and giving them stuff to drink, and then sending them off to their rooms happy, where you'll get points in lots of different ways. The core system in this game is fantastic, where you will roll a bunch of dice and all those dice will be allocated to a different individual action, such as being able to gather food, being able to gather drink, being able to basically fill up new rooms to put your guests into, or even just taking money or points in order to, or climb up this track in order to satisfy the emperor. And all these things are going on at the same time. You're going to have to be as efficient as you can, trying to feed your guests and getting them off to their rooms as quickly as possible, not only to score victory points, but to score these bonuses as well. And you can do some amazing combinations in terms of stringing moves together and getting a bunch of actions all at once. So a very satisfying game, one where the theme of the game just comes through extremely strongly and helps to explain how the game works, because this is actually a pretty involved game in terms of its strategy, but because it is so well tied back to its source material that you can easily explain this one and easily relay the information on how to teach this to somebody. And I love this dice system where whenever you roll these dice, they are allocated to these actions, and sometimes a certain action is going to have a bunch of dice allocated to that spot, which means when you go there, you're going to get it at a stronger value. But the ones that are less often rolled are going to be a lot more rare, but not as powerful. It's all about prioritizing which dice you're going to take in order to trump your opponent. And it all just comes together in an amazing package with lots of flavoursome cards and different things you can do and powers you can utilise, and it's just one of my favourite strategy games of all times. And if you want a more involved game that you can sink your teeth into, this one plays very well at 2 players. and probably one of the best two-player strategy games that I've ever played. That is the Grand Austria Hotel. At number 8, I have something on the polar opposite side of the scale. This is Just One. Now, Just One is probably one of the best examples of a game that you can play with absolutely anybody, whether it's going to be a 6-year-old or a 99-year-old. Everybody is going to understand how this fun party game works. Now, this game does scale pretty well from about 4 players up to 7 players or so, or you can even play with more than that if you have the resources to do so. But this one is an extremely easy game to explain. You can probably get it explained in less than a minute, where you are working together. So it's a fully cooperative game where you just happen to work together to try to get the best score as possible. And on this game, you are going to have this card with a number of different words on that card. And then the person in the hot seat is going to pick one of these words without knowing. Basically, they're assigned to a number, so everyone else can see the word apart from the person. And then simultaneously, all the other players are going to write a one-word clue associated to that word. So, for example, if the word was holiday, for example, everybody else might write bucket and spade, or sand, or beach, or sunshine. And once that's done, every person is going to reveal their words to each other without showing the person in the hot seat. And if there's ever a duplicate word, then all those words are taken out of the equation. So this is a game where you've got to think outside the box. You want to be obvious so that the person guessing is going to know the answer, but not obvious enough that you're going to have crossover with the other players, which is going to limit the opportunity for the person to guess it correctly. This is such a clever game that I wasn't expecting to be as good as it was. It's one of those games that you think, why wasn't this game designed sooner? And has been a unanimous hit with whoever I played this game with. One of the most accessible, yet one of the most fun party games to be released, and just a definite essential for any board game collection. So at number 7, I have Modern Art. Now, Modern Art is an auction-style game that accommodates 3 to 5 players, and it plays extremely well at each of those player counts. Now, this is a really simple game where auctions are really the heart of it. So constant throughout, you are going to be bidding on these different pieces of artworks and lots of different methods. So you've got like your standard auction house style auctions, you've got your one-off bid auctions, you've even got blind bids. And this creates a lot of tension and player interaction as you want to get good value out of these bids you're putting in, but you also don't want to spend too much. So I love the way that works because at every round, someone is going to be auctioning these pieces of art off. And if you buy a piece of art off another player, then that money goes into their supply, which essentially gives them victory points. So that's a really interesting decision to be made. But on top of all that, only the 3 most popular artists are going to end up scoring from round to round. So the person who has sold the most pieces of artwork is going to score £30 million or $30 million, whatever it is, for each of their paintings. The second most popular is going to score 20, and the third most popular is going to score 10. But from round to round, that's going to compound. So if someone remains the most popular, they could be worth up to 60 or 90 million per piece. And that is really cool. But on top of all of that, there is an additional twist where as soon as someone falls out of favour or who isn't in the most popular 3 artists, they are not going to score anything. And this adds a whole new dimension of player interaction as you're trying to basically tank certain artists where you know people have spent a lot of money on, which can potentially be worth nothing. This is such a simple and easy game to explain, but the scoring is dynamic, it's engaging, and one that has stood the test of time, because this is a game that goes back 20 years or so, and it still feels fresh, it's fun, and it's just so interactive and clever. That is Modern Art, an absolute essential. At number 6, I have Concordia. So Concordia, I think, is one of the best Euro games. This is one of the best strategy-style games that anybody can own. A purist-style game that is just full of decisions, full of depth, but is really easy to explain. So this is a card-driven game, as you have a hand of cards for all different actions on them, and all your turn is going to consist of is playing one of these cards and doing the relative thing. And it's going to basically mean that you're going to be traveling around this map of Europe or the world. You're going to be establishing these trade houses and collecting resources and things. But I love the level of player interaction in this game because it's not a nasty level of interaction, but it is meaningful interaction as you want to beat people to these trading houses, because if you are second or third, you're going to have to spend double or triple the amount of resources that you normally would, which can be quite debilitating. And there's a great tension of doing all the different things you can do. There's loads of different ways you can score things. And although on the face of it, you might think, this game looks boring, my friends aren't going to enjoy this game. Whoever I've played this game with, even people who don't like these style of games, have always said, you know what, I don't tend to like Euro, boring looking strategy games, but Concordia I do enjoy because it's really good. And I completely validate that. I think this is one of the most versatile games out there. So easy to teach. It scales amazingly because you can play it 2 players on a tighter map or more players on bigger maps. And if you want more different types of maps, you can buy the expansions. And I think this is objectively one of the best games ever designed. It's got a ton of things you can try. It stands up to repeated plays. And it's just one of the most involved and elegant, distinguished games that I've ever played, and I think is an absolute essential for anybody's collection, and one of the best games ever designed. So if you want that meatier level of game, one where you want to outthink your opponent, but you don't want to absolutely smash them to bits, then Concordia is your go-to game. So highly recommended, Concordia. At number 5, I have another simple card game. This is Coloretto. So Coloretto, again, I think is a game that is one of the best examples of a game that scales well in terms of being able to accommodate, I think it's 2 to 6 players, and it plays brilliantly at each of those player counts, so it's going to give you a versatile time when you can bring this game and get it to the table. But this one is a push your luck style game and a set collection style game, as you are playing these chameleon cards onto these 3 or 4 different hops, depending on the different player count, which are basically different columns of cards. And the idea is you are trying to collect 3 different colours of these chameleons, because the more cards you collect of a certain type, you're going to score more and more points for. But the twist of this game is that if you ever start collecting a 4th, a 5th or a 6th type of chameleon, then they're going to score as negative points. But the way that you get these chameleons is extremely fun and engaging, because you are going to be revealing 1 card at a time and placing them on one of these columns. And if you don't choose to do that, you can choose to take one of the columns and put them into your scoring pile, basically. And this creates some amazing decisions, whether you think, am I going to take the chameleons that I definitely want? Yes, there's only one of them, but at least I know what I want and I'm not going to score any negative points. Or do I want to push my luck and wait for my turn to come around again and hope that nobody's tampered with these piles and added chameleons that I don't want? So this is a game that you really have to consider or what you're laying on the plate of your opponents, because you don't want to give them really juicy stacks that there's going to give them a lot of points. So you want to not only tarnish their piles, but you want to make sure that you've got a good pile to take as well. And it's just boiled down into those 2 extremely simple decisions. And it's just a great example of a game that I've played, 40, 50 times. And I'm not even slightly fatigued with this one, because it is just so versatile, and everybody I've played this with has thought this is great, and they've ended up buying their own copy. So a quintessential filler game, and one of the best examples of a quick, 15 to 20 minute card game, and an essential. That is Coloretto. At number 4, I have Chinatown. Now, Chinatown is one of the most interactive games that you're ever going to play. This is a game where the rules themselves just are very basic, and it just facilitates a real fun experience. So once you know the rules, which are really easy to communicate, you're just going to sit back and just enjoy the experience. So this is what we call a negotiation style game, and you have this map of Chinatown, which are all divided into, I think it's 5 different sections, and those sections are all divided into a bunch of different squares, which have individual numbers associated to them, which are basically supposed to represent different units, basically shop units. And from round to round, you are going to be drawing a bunch of these different cards which associate to all different units on the board. And once that's done, you're going to place one of your tokens to show that you control that particular unit. And then you're going to draw a bunch of tokens out of a bag which show lots of different businesses. So you've got like laundrettes, you've got jewellery stores or restaurants. And all these are going to score in ways where the bigger cluster of these shops you have together, the more money they're going to generate. So this is an economic style game where you're trying to get as most money as you can by the end. So if you have, say, one building on its own, it's only going to be worth 10,000 per round. If you have 2, it's going to be worth 2,000. But then if you have 3, it's going to be worth like 40,000. Then 4, it's going to be worth like 60,000. So it ramps up the more you connect these buildings together. But the trick is that you can, once you've acquired your buildings and once you've acquired your spots on the board, then it is free reign to discuss, to negotiate, to trade with the other players as you see fit. So you could say, I really need this number 18 space because I have the 15, 16 and 17, but Dave over there owns it, and I'm going to have to pay him a lot of money to buy that off him, and he knows that. So you might think, I really need this space for my restaurant because it's going to give me a bunch of money by the end of the game if I get it down early. But I need to pay Dave because he knows that, and he's going to want to milk every single penny he can out of it. But at the same time, he's going to consider that if he doesn't take any money for it, then it's going to be worth nothing to him. So this is such a dynamic game, one that you can be creative with. You can strike up all these deals, and it makes you feel like a real tycoon by the end of it. And probably one of the best examples of a streamlined rule set, but the game itself is just fantastically fun, and just one of the most interactive, one of the most fun experiences that you can get done in about an hour's time. And I couldn't recommend this game enough. That is Chinatown. So at number 3, I have No Thanks. Now, No Thanks is another simple filler card game with an element of push your luck and an element of bidding. So this is a golfing style game where you're trying to get as few points as you can by the end of the game. So every card you take is going to have a number on it from, I think it's number, say, 3 all the way up to number 36 or so. And of course, the higher the number of that card is, the more points you're going to get, which is a bad thing. So you want to make sure you're getting as few as points as possible, 0 being the best score you can get. But the decisions in this game are so simple. So all you're going to do on a turn is you're going to reveal one of these cards, and then from player to player, you are either going to decide to take that card and take it as points, which again is a bad thing, or you can choose to place one of these tokens on it to pass on taking that. So for every token you place on, it's going to accumulate on that card, but it's going to keep passing around the table. And there's eventually going to become a point where you're going to want to take the card, because every token on that card is going to count as a negative point, which is a good thing. And of course, it's going to give you more capacity to pass on future cards that come out. So yeah, the more you pass on these cards, you're going to run out of these tokens, which means that when new cards are revealed, you might actually end up taking a worse card. And that is such a visceral and fundamental and engaging decision to be made. And I would say that this is probably the best game I've ever played in terms of the amount of different types of people I played this with, and it's always unanimously been enjoyed, massively in fact. And I've even played this game with people who've not played any board games at all, and we've had a bit of a board game night and played lots of different things, and at the end of the night they say, you know what, can we just go back and play No Thanks because that one was the best one. And don't be put off on the fact that this game is so simple. The decisions are still there. It will add a lot of tension on whether you know when to bite the bullet or not and to take those horrible cards. And on top of all that, there's a really interesting decision where if you end up collecting cards of a certain row or chronological, so if you had, say, the 16, 17 and 18, only the lowest score or lowest card in that run is going to count towards your final score. So another dimension of push your luck there, where you might want to end up taking higher cards because you can fill in the gaps in between and only score the lowest one. Just a game you have to try for yourself. Has amazing vibe to it, amazing fun factor. That is No Thanks at number 3. At number 2, I have the Isle of Skye. Now, the Isle of Skye is a tile placement game as you are trying to score different objectives from game to game. So you've got a bunch of different scoring cards, and for every time you play this game, you're going to have a different array of scoring cards, which adds a lot of replayability and make each game feel very different. So these tiles are going to consist of roads, they're going to consist of kind of greenery or mountains or rivers. And you are trying to build this little piece of land by placing these tiles and lining them up to basically try and score as many points as you can out of these different scoring pools, such as maybe scoring a point for each of your segments of road on your longest road, or for your longest column on your board, or for every boat on your board, all these kind of things. And the way you acquire these tiles is really interesting, because at the start of the game or each round you are going to draw a number of 3 tiles from the bag, and you're going to put them behind your secret screen, and one of those tiles you're going to choose to cull out of the game and put it back into the bag, but the other 2 you're going to assign a number of coins to. And that's quite important, because once everybody's done the same thing, you're going to reveal your screen, and then in player order you are going to be able to pay a number of coins depending on the amount of coins that player's assigned to that tile in order to buy that tile from the other player and add it to your board. But the trick is that if nobody chooses to buy a tile from you, then you are going to have to pay the amount that you've assigned to it. So you can't be too greedy and think, I really want this tile I've drawn, but I don't want other people to have it, so I'm going to put a bunch of coins onto it to prevent that. Because if you do that, you're going to have to pay that out of your own money. And that is such a cool decision to be made. And sometimes you might think, this player over here really wants this tile, so I'm going to add loads of coins to it because I know he's going to buy it. And then at the end of the game or end of the turn, he hasn't bought it, and then you have to pay that money yourself, which might not be any use to you. And it's just a wonderful game that's broken down into very digestible chunks, but it still has a lot of depth. It's quick, it only takes about 45 minutes to play, and in comparison to the amount of decisions to be made throughout, that is an absolutely wonderful sweet spot. And I would always say that this is one of the most versatile games that you could play with, because really experienced gamers are going to get a lot out of this. But still, I've introduced this to like my girlfriend, for example, who's not a gamer, but this is one of her favourite games because the puzzly aspect to it in terms of building your block of tiles is really tactile, it's really puzzly, but the auction style of things as well just adds that extra degree of gaminess which just satisfies everybody. So yeah, Isle of Skye, an amazing, amazing versatile game by Alexander Pfister, is at number 2. And finally, at number 1, the most essential game that I think everybody should have in their collection is Las Vegas Royale. Now, this is a pretty simple dice rolling game. Everybody seems to like dice. I love dice in games. And this one is a really luck-driven game. So normally I'm not the biggest fan of luck in games, but for this game, it works fantastically. So all you're going to do in this game is that you're going to have a bunch of these different tiles on the board, all associated to a different pip value on a dice. You've got the number 1, you've got the number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And at the start of each round, a number of money is dished out onto each of these casinos or these tiles. And then your turn is going to consist of rolling a big bunch of dice into this bowl, and you're going to pick one of the values which you've rolled. So say, for example, you've rolled 3 6s. You're going to take all the 6s and you're going to put it onto that relevant casino, meaning that if you have the most dice on a certain casino, you are going to get the bigger money value on that casino. So the idea is you're trying to get as much money as you can by the end of the game, which is 3 rounds. But there's a lot of twists in this game. So the first thing is that if you ever match a number with somebody else in terms of the dice you have on a casino, then you are going to cancel each other out. So say I had 3 dice and Anna had 3 dice as well. But then Dave had 2 dice, then Anna and I are going to cancel each other out, and Dave is going to end up winning that casino, and we're going to end up getting nothing. And that adds a great amount of tension as you can manipulate the board and try to get everything to your advantage and try to shaft other people getting from the best checks. But on top of all that, you have these modules that you can put onto the board as well, which add so much fun and variety in terms of adding all these little mini games to the game as well, where you go to certain casinos and it will trigger a little mini game, such as being able to place blockers on certain spots, or being able to stop people going to a certain casino, or even doing like a little push your luck game where if you roll a double, you get a big jackpot and that kind of thing. And it just has such a party vibe to it, but it still has some pretty interesting decisions. And depending on the setup of the game, by plugging in those different modules, you can choose a really light-hearted, fluffy, fun style game that everybody's going to understand, or you can actually choose to put in some pretty thinky modules in there as well, which will actually pull you in quite a few directions and actually burden you with some quite taxing decisions. So an amazing experience, one of the funnest games I've had, and has again been a unanimous hit with whoever I played this with. People are going to love dice rolling. People generally love that pushy luck gambling style vibe to a game, and this game just has that in spades. So one of the most versatile, one of the funnest and most widely appealing games that I've played, and I absolutely adore this one, and I think everybody should have it in their collection. That is Las Vegas Royale at number 1. So I hope you've really enjoyed this top 10 list of essential board games. Again, I stand by these games 100% and would stake my reputation on each of these, because I think, or I'm confident that you'll enjoy these, and I'm confident that everyone you play these with are also going to enjoy them. So if you have enjoyed the video, please hit like and subscribe to my channel. And check out my other videos too, because I believe I've done reviews for each of these games. Additionally, if you want to support the channel, you can check out my Patreon page to keep the channel going and to keep you informed about all the great games coming out. So for everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.